Hey Rob, how would you run a maze in D&D? That's a really good question. I have done so before, but not for a while. There's a couple ways I can imagine doing so. You either have a maze pre-written that the players don't know, or you abstract the concept of a maze, but you don't actually have something written down. If you go the first route, then there's a couple ways of handling that as well. You go theatre of the mind to add to the level of confusion and the level of the characters having to remember, the players having to remember which way they turned and when. And you just tell them you're at a T-junction, or you're on a straight and there's something comes off to the left or whatever. Every time you get to a choice, you tell them left, right, straight on, whatever. And they make a choice, and you just you behind the screen trace where they're going on the map. And obviously, to keep it interesting, around the maze, you've got like, this is a pit trap here, or this is a monster around this side of things, or whatever. And you just walk them through the map, and then they backtrack, and you have to be very clear that you're keeping a track of everything that they're saying and making it very clear to them. That I wouldn't recommend that way of doing things, because it's likely that you're not going to do an absolute perfect job of telling them exactly what's happening and when they're turning. And their players, their characters rather, are having the benefit of actually being in the maze, whereas the players are not. And so their players are having a harder time than their characters would be. And so their characters would know things that their players don't. And it's easy to get lost in theatre of the mind. The other way to play that out, if you did actually have a pre-written maze, is to have a pre-written maze behind the character sheet, the DM screen, and then have a whiteboard or paper or something in front of them, and you can draw out just the junction that they're at, and as far as they can see in either direction, you just draw that part of the map out. Or if you're doing it on digital, easy enough to get programs that can do fog of war, and then you can see everything, but you can remove the fog from the places that they can see. That stuff. And then they can keep a track of it. Their way of doing it, that means that you're giving all of your players basically the keen mind feat at that point, and you're saying you're going to perfectly remember and recall all of the paths that you've gone on up to this point. So that's a toss-up that you'd have to decide for yourself whether that's how you want to play your games. But I think doing it that way is more preferable in my opinion, because you're putting less onus on the players, on the characters. No, you're putting less onus on the players to remember things when their characters would know that stuff. And drawing the map out is switching that. The players know information that the characters maybe wouldn't, because after they're deep into the maze, they wouldn't necessarily remember their exact perfect recall to where they're back, whereas the players will be able to trace that out on the map. And so if you've got players that are really good at not metagaming when they've got player information that the characters don't have, then that's fine, because then the players will go, I'm just going to roll an intelligence check, see if I remember my way back out of the maze. Because that's the other thing you can be doing. The other way to do it entirely is to not have a map, not have a pre-written maze, and you instead just abstract the concept of a maze by saying, everybody roll a survival check. Who's taking the lead? Are you all going in the same direction? Are you all not? If everybody's going in the same direction, you choose one person to choose each time, and you say, we're gonna abstract this as a series of X number of checks. Make it 3, 5, or 10. 10 is going to get pretty tedious, but 3 or 5 checks I would probably do, and say DC is 15. Make a survival check. You succeed. Okay, you move on through the maze. You feel like you're going in the right direction. You get to another junction. Make another survival check. DC 15. Blah blah blah. Or you don't tell them the DC, and you keep a track of how many they succeed, how many they fail, and every time maybe you set it at 3 checks, and if they get 3 in a row that are correct, they find the quickest way through the maze. But for every one they get wrong, they have to make another check, and they keep going until they've had 3 successful checks. That way, every time and between every check, I would put a monster or a trap. That's probably how I would do it. I'm kind of just spitballing on my way here. You're kind of watching me dungeon master designing. If I was designing a maze, how I would probably do it is you walk into a maze. The very first thing you encounter is a junction, left or right. They go left, regardless of whether they go left or right. It's either the correct option or the wrong option based on their roll. You have them roll a survival check to see if they know which way to go, or just a luck check, really. because it's not really about tracking something through the dungeon. Maybe it's just pure dumb luck. Do you happen to go left or right? Get them to flip a coin, and heads is a success, tails is a failure, or whatever. So I'd do that. Regardless of if the first check was a success or failure, I would have them encounter something, probably a trap, a puzzle, a riddle, a monster, something like that. Just a mini monster that's not going to take up a whole bunch of time, but might take up a spell or two, and maybe do a few hit points of damage to them before they kill it. Then after the encounter, they reach another junction and they flip a coin, left or right, or straight on, or whatever. Maybe they've got a big junction where it's like left, forwards, back, or you can even go up some steps to another floor if you want to like introduce like three dimensions, because we should talk about flying in a second too. So you get to that, you roll however many options there are, and then you have them encounter something else, and then you have another junction, then you encounter something else. And basically keep going until they've succeeded, until they've got whatever your success parameter is. 3 times, 5 times, 10 times, whatever it is for you. Keep them in this dungeon until they have succeeded that many times, and then they find the exit. That's probably how I would do it. I would also strongly encourage that when you are designing anything for your games, but particularly a maze, you need to come up with a reason as to why they won't just cheese the entire thing with spells. If they're high enough level to have Dimension Door, and you tell them you come across a maze, you can see that the mansion that you're trying to get to is just on the other side of this maze, but in order to get to the maze, in order to get to the mansion, you have to go through the maze. They'd go, how wide is the maze? You go like, it's about 400 yards, 400 feet long, or whatever. And the guy goes, okay, I cast Dimension Door 500 feet that way, and I'm on the other side of the maze. Or I cast Fly, and I go up above the maze. Or once you're in the maze, I cast Spider Climb on myself, and I walk up the wall of the maze to get to the top, and then I guide the rest of them as I walk around the wall. Or I have a familiar that's a hawk, and the hawk goes up, and I walk into the hawk's eyes, and I look, and I tell everybody where they're going. Like, there's all sorts of ways that you can use your magic to get around a maze. So I would, if you're designing this and you want to make sure that they actually use the maze the way it's intended, you have to account for that in the maze design. The last thing you want to do is get into the game and then have them suggest something that's very clever and creative use of their spells or features to get past this maze, and then you go in the moment, shit, I didn't think of that. Now let me come up with some reason why that doesn't work. Like, oh, you do this, but then an anti-magic field starts and blah blah blah. That's gonna feel shit for your players. If you've already established ahead of time, because you've thought about it in the game design process, in the preparation stage, you've already thought about he might try to do this, therefore this is in place. Then you've prepped ahead of time. It's not you reacting to him doing something and trying to no but him, or like steamroll his idea. It's you already preempting what he's going to do and saying, I've already thought of that stuff. It's exactly why when I was creating the D&D, the Viva la Dirt League campaign, where they were heading to the beanstalk, I wanted them to climb the beanstalk. I wanted them to encounter the puzzles that I'd put in place in the beanstalk. I wanted them to encounter the bad guys or the monsters or whatever, the fights that I had in place for them to fight during the climb of the beanstalk. I wanted the beanstalk to be an ascension, like a whole fun episode or two. And so I said, well, they are high enough level now. Barradoon has some teleportation abilities. Barradoon has Summon Dragon, so you can just ride a dragon up the beanstalk. Bob can fly. And I had to put in sections of, if Barradoon tries to fly the dragon, then okay, he can do that. But he's avoiding these encounters, so I'm going to give him these encounters instead. Like there were some flying monsters, like harpies and stuff, that could have attacked him while he was flying the dragon. Or there were certain checks for him to hold on to the dragon as he's flying up, because the dragon would have been flying at a steep angle. And then I'm also thinking ahead to if Barradoon says, oh, well, in that case, I'll fly at a really shallow angle, but still circling my way up slowly. Then I put in a table of, like, depending on the angle that the dragon is flying, yes, he can fly at a shallow angle, but then he'll need to cast the spell more because it'll take longer for him to get to the surface. So I think about all these things myself personally. This is part of my game prep, is to think about, what if they do this? Is that going to be okay? Is it going to completely cheese the thing that I've prepped over here? Is it going to remove anybody else's fun at the table? if I've put this encounter in place to really demonstrate how awesome it is that Greg's a cleric or Bob's able to do a shit ton of damage now or whatever. Like if the purpose of the encounter is to demonstrate a thing, and then the thing that this other person can do is going to just bypass this, then this person's never going to get to showcase his cool abilities. So how do I utilize the thing that I was going to do over here to demonstrate his cool abilities over in this other way that they could? So yes, they can still circumnavigate what I intended them to do, but I will still be able to get across the purpose of what I was doing in the first place in the way that they circumnavigate what they're doing. Felt like I was rambling there a bit, but hopefully that made sense.
Hopefully that made sense.
Friends, fans, and fine folk, hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments what your favourite part was.